Hello again, everybody. Great to have you along on yet another edition of Conversations of Connection, mental wellness in sports and life. My name is Scott Murray.
Hello, and I'm Dr.NinaRiosDoria, and welcome to our show today.
Delighted to have all of us with us here today, and I'm really excited about our guest here today.
I am too.
Well, I tell you why, because he's not only a great football player and somebody we got a chance to be, involved with as a member of the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, and all that good stuff. Right. Back in the 80s when head coach Tom Landry was still calling the shots. But he's so involved just in everything that goes on in our community as well. Yes. And so that's why all these years later, he was there from 1980 to 1989. Mm-hmm. And then, where'd Timmy Newsome go? He's right here. I'm on different boards with him. He's just a good guy making a difference in the world. And that's what we certainly need. Mm-hmm. So
he's going to motivate and inspire a lot of us out there.
Well, I think so. Ladies and gentlemen, according to Nina and Scott, the one and only Timmy Newsome. How are you, my friend?
I am doing very well. Thank you, Scott.
Good.
Yes.
You look good in your Cowboys blue.
Well, thank you.
What's new? If I was to sum up, we just shared a little info with the world and your tenure with the Cowboys during the decade of the 80s. What about since then, though?
Well, I've had my technology business for 30 years. In fact, I'm going to celebrate my 30th year anniversary of my technology company.
Take 20 seconds and talk about that technology business and what you founded.
Yeah, well, it was founded in 1991, and we provide unified communications and collaborations products and services to the midsize and enterprise market. And so that's what we've been doing for the past 15 and 20 years. I started out as a computer programmer analyst, and Gil Brandt was the person that got me my first job when I got to Dallas, and he, of course, was the player personnel director for the Cowboys. And so I just been having fun doing that since I retired.
Yeah, now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, member of the Cowboys Ring of Honor. So, he's a good man.
He's a good man.
You talk about all that he was involved with, just incredible.
That's exactly
incredible.
Right.
Very, very iconic in the great success of the Cowboys.
Indeed.
Well, it is great to see you, and I talk about your involvement in the community. You're still so out there. Tell us why you do that and some of the groups that you are involved with.
Well, I think my mother had a lot to do with it. My parents were both very involved in the community when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And so it's just an offshoot of that, just trying to continue her legacy and my father's legacy in community involvement.
Good for you. Good for you.
Speaking of family, because I always find it so interesting when you grow up. I know you had quite a few siblings.
That's right.
And yet you continue to do all these things. What do you think it was about your family life that really impacted you a lot?
I think the thing that helped me was that we got along very well. And my father was a farmer. And so we spent a lot of time on the farm together doing various things. And we were having fun doing it. Mm-hmm. And so we were always around each other, and we always challenged each other in various ways. I had two older brothers who played football. They were very good, and I just emulated the things that they did. And I just decided to take it a little bit further than they did.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
That's a great question you ask him, Nina, because you address the work ethic. Every time that somebody says, I grew up on a farm, or I had a great family and we all worked together on the farm, there's just a real esprit de corps that everybody comes together. And it's a great learning experience, I think, for a child, isn't it?
It really is. It teaches you responsibility, first and foremost. There are things that we have to do every day, and there are chores that we have to take care of. And so it was really about being responsible in that way so that we can earn a living.
Yeah. And from a mental wellness standpoint, the people that you deal with on a daily basis, I'm sure when you see people like this, you know that they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, like a good mindset. And so you talk about, this is what we just had to do. What would happen if you didn't do that?
Right.
I'm just curious. Curious about that.
Trouble.
Well, I have a 18-year-old son, and I'm trying to think of creative ways to instill in him a work ethic, and it's a very different dynamic. I can't say, let's go and look at the chickens, or let's go and pick grapes and that sort of thing. So I have to use other creative methods to motivate him. And sometimes it's a challenge. Mm-hmm. And if I tried to say to him what I used to do, Dad, that's not me.
Yeah. Not me, Dad.
You have to be more creative.
You hear the word entitlement used a lot when you talk about young people today.
Right.
Yes?
That's it. Oh, no question. No
Where
question.
does that come from? Where does that all of a sudden come from? It seems like it's so widespread.
Well, America was a very rural country for many years, and now people are gravitating to the city. And so as they move out of those rural areas, there's a different way of doing things. And I think that transitional period is what has created the issues that we have today.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
One of the things you also were talking about when you were talking about your dad and growing up and your family, you said we worked really hard, but he made it fun.
Yeah.
And I think that fun is missing a lot in life.
Yes.
How do you keep the fun in your life? Because I'm assuming that you still have a little bit of fun just talking with you beforehand.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, for me, fun is working out and lifting weights. To me, fun is playing
Looks like
tennis.
he still play football, doesn't he, Nina?
Yes. When I saw him, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, and to me, fun is running. And so those are the things I do to enjoy myself.
How do you stay in that place to just keep on going when you just like, I'm just tired. I'm just done. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to do this. What keeps you motivated to get up every day and do all that you are doing? All these things that you're involved with that Scott talked about. You're so involved. You care a lot. What keeps you so motivated?
It's a habit.
Yeah.
It's something that I look forward to doing. There aren't very many days when I get up and say, I don't really feel like doing this today. It's more like I need to take a break, and then tomorrow I'm going to get back up and do what I've been doing for the past 25, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And so once it becomes a habit for me, it's just routine.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. When you talk about mental health, mental wellness, that's what Dr. Nina is dealing with every single day of her life. And she deals with a lot of sports teams. Mm-hmm. And you see some of the things, well, here, Dak, Dak Prescott, the Cowboys quarterback, had some issues. He lost his brother, and just all the things from a mental health standpoint that are going on in sports. Not specifically Dak now here as I address this question to you, Timmy, but what it was like back in the day when you were playing and coming forward, what it might be now, because I know you still keep in touch with a lot of the fellas.
Sure.
This is what she's dealing with every single day. It exists there. You look at these guys like yourself, and you think, oh my gosh, he plays for America's team. Oh, that's Dallas Cowboys. Oh, he's got everything going. Look at
Sure.
But it's not always that way, is it?
No, it's not. I think for me, in the time I came out, there were very few opportunities to be criticized. It was the paper or it was television. Television was very short. The paper was another issue. So if you could navigate just those two mediums, you were okay. Now you've got social media.
Yeah.
And it's endless. And it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I can't even begin to fathom how I would react in this day's world.
That's a great point, isn't it?
Yeah,
Never really thought about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
a
very,
whole
very
different
different.
world.
That's right. Very much so.
So how, what are your thoughts in regards to mental health, mental wellness? For you, what is keeping you in that mentally healthy place? And maybe what's some words of encouragement for those that are struggling, that are athletes?
Well, currently for me, I'm still motivated to earn a living. I'm still motivated to getting up every day and exercising so I can prevent preventable illnesses. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key for me, is to be able to wake up, still do what I do, and do what I've been doing for the past 30 years. That's my motivation to go out and see the world and see what kind of difference I can make. Even though it may be very small, I just see what kind of difference I can make.
What about so what would you say to the athlete today that came to you that says, I'm struggling, I'm just finishing up football, I'm don't know who I am, I'm done playing NFL football, or college level football or any sport? What would you tell them to help them get into that place that you're at?
Well, first of all, if they're at the end of the road and they haven't prepared themselves for the next chapter, that's a real tough one. I try to get them early enough to be prepared before that day comes, so that transitional period is not as traumatic. And so, but if they're already there, then there's counseling that's going to have to be taken into consideration, because now they've got to transition into something else. And so you do an assessment. There are services within the National Football League that help former players provide an assessment as to what they can do going forward. And so that's the first step, and seek that counseling and use it consistently. I have two counselors. I have one in New Orleans and I have one in Washington, D.C., and they call me every few months and they give me a survey every few months as to my state of mind and my health. And that's very encouraging to know that someone cares about my well-being enough to call me and say, how are you doing? Yeah. Are there any issues? Is there anything that we can help you with? And so that's been very encouraging.
What are some of the things that they might share? It's obviously, and maybe I would even ask you, you see somebody like this, just in the short time you've gotten to know Timmy, he's a pretty level-headed guy, isn't he? He just seems really focused, and I'm sure versus some of the other people at some of the other sports teams and what have you, whether it's collegiate, whether it's professional, is quite different. As I would say, Timmy's got his head pretty much screwed on
He's in a good
the right
place.
way.
Well, and he can give his feedback too, but what I'm seeing, and maybe you're seeing this too, is just you're so intentional about overall mental health, physical
Good point.
health. And you just have a regimen, you have a routine, you're committed, and you value health.
That's why she's the doctor. She's pretty perceptive, isn't she?
That's right.
You're like, yes, that's true. But you value health, you value good work ethic, and you just everything you're talking about. That's what gets you up and gets you going. So, and I love that you have that accountability because that's what we need. We need a race to sign up for to be accountable to exercise. He's running a marathon in a couple months.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
I'm not surprised. Not surprised,
And then
Nina.
he's just doing a half in December. So he's doing a lot of great things, and so I love it. Yeah.
Well, and so, playing off what Nina just shared, specifically, what are some of the things that the people in D.C. and what was the other location that you talked about?
New Orleans.
Okay.
Okay.
What do they talk about? What are they looking for? Because they obviously are dealing with other athletes that aren't near as emotionally together as you are.
Yeah.
Well, I went to New Orleans back in 2018. 75% of that evaluation dealt from the neck up.
Really?
Yes, 75% of the evaluation. And it was a lot of question and answer. There were some issues that they would bring up very of sensitive nature and just wanted to know what my state of mind is. And so when I sat and answered the questions, one of the things they asked me, they says, well, do you think you'll ever do counseling? I said, not only will I have, and I still do. I go to counseling. I want to, do a self-assessment every so often just to make sure everything's fine. Now, fortunately, the National Football League provides those services, and I do everything within my power to take advantage of those services. And so I encourage any student athlete to participate in that process because you just never know when you're going to really need it. And so if you always make it a routine, when you have to have it, it's there.
And the most important thing you've learned from it? What might it be?
Stability. And it keeps me grounded. Sometimes I know it from my own personal point of view, when you have all the accolades that you have playing sports and you think you're better than everybody else, you need to get brought down a peg, and you might as well do it on your own terms and not someone else's. And so that's what the counseling piece does for me, is it keeps me grounded in a way that I ordinarily could not do for myself.
Very interesting. And that's kind of how I introduced him in the first place.
Yeah.
One of the, really, you are.
Because I can be very cocky.
Thankfully, not very much.
Opposite of that, which I wanted to say about you, is you seem very humble. Like you have humility. And,
He is.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, going back, and I don't know where you need to go back, where did you get that lesson? That life lesson is, wow, I'm now learning about humility, and you carry that with you today.
Well, that started with my parents.
Yeah.
My mother and father were very humble people. My mother was a school teacher, and she taught the 8th grade. But she was a very community-oriented person. And I remember very vividly people coming into her home, grown-ups who couldn't read or write, and asking her to interpret a document. And so one day I looked at her, I said, Mama, you're doing this for free. Why don't you take the money? She said, we have everything we need. And if I can help them be better, then that's what I'll do. And so I kind of sat and watched them operate and how they treated people. And that's kind of how I wanted to live my life.
What great role models.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Incredible role models. Your mother's my new best friend.
Oh, yes. And
Wasn't that great? Oh,
yeah,
my
and
gosh.
she did very well. She has a building named after her on
Does she?
the campus of her alma
I
mater,
think she
Shaw
did pretty
University.
well.
And yeah, she did.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very neat. I'm not surprised, Timmy.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Well, so we're talking all these great things like you've done. I feel like I know for myself when I've gone through some tough times is where I have the biggest growth. And did you ever have through your career have a really like difficult time where your mental health was challenged and you were able to get through it because of that?
Oh, yes. There was one time in particular, I had been in the National Football League for maybe 2 or 3 years. And I guess it was the Dallas Morning News. They always published a year-ending grade of all of the players. And I picked up the paper and I'm looking at the grades that they gave everybody, and I got an F.
No.
Yeah, I was the only player on the team that got an F. And I'll never
did
forget
that stand
this.
for fabulous?
No.
Fantastic?
No,
Yeah, right.
no, not at all. It meant what it said. So Dennis Thurman, who played defense.
Yeah, defensive back.
I didn't even think the guy knew my name. So he calls me later that night. He says, look, you're not as bad as an F. He said, but I want you to do me a favor. Call Coach Landry. Never talked to Coach Landry. Why would I call Coach Landry? He said, listen, call Coach Landry and set up a meeting with him. He said, it'll change your life. So I hung the phone up, debated whether or not I should or not. So the next morning, I called Coach Landry, got a secretary. I said, I'd like to see Coach Landry. And she didn't even ask me what it was about. And she looked at his schedule and scheduled a time. A few days later, I went into his office. And Coach Landry said, yeah, Timmy, what do you need? I said, Coach, I just have one question. Am I as bad as an F? And he laughed and laughed and laughed. He says, no, Timmy, you're not. However, this is what I need out of that position. He said, I want you to get me the tough yards. I want you to be able to catch. And I want you to be able to block very well. He said, now, if you can do those 3 things, you'll stay here. He said, if you can't, I'll find someone else. I said, well, Coach, that's all I needed to know. He stood up, showed me to the door, and that was it. And ever since then, whenever I had an issue, I'd go see him. I did not leave it to chance.
Very interesting.
And that was a career-altering moment, what Dennis Thurman did.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I can see Dennis doing that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see Dennis doing that.
Yeah.
Good for Dennis. That was, That's good stuff.
That is.
Yeah.
And the fact that you paused for a minute when he said, you need to go see Coach Landry, and you're like,
Yeah.
do I? And that was a pivotal moment for you.
Well, he was such an imposing figure for me at that time.
Coach Landry.
Right. And I wasn't sure.
For many of the players.
For many of the players.
Yeah.
I mean, it created a lot of problems. It wasn't just me.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you could not do it and still visualize that F, or you can do it and find out why the F was presented in the way it was. And so I realized that grade emanated from the coaching staff and their level of disappointment. It didn't come from the reporter. It came from the coaching staff. And so Coach Landry reaffirmed that that's where it came from. And it was up to me to change it.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. If you could change one thing about life in the NFL, and it's certainly different the last couple of years, and I try and stay away if you can from COVID and all that, what's changed as a result of that. But I mean, just from a mental wellness standpoint, and all that, that if you could play social worker, or maybe not social worker so much, but psychologist like Dr. Nina, what would you do? What would you like to see changed in well, maybe not just in sports, but in America, in life, in our regular life? Because that's the name of our show, is mental wellness.
Sure. In
sports and in life. What comes to mind?
I just think, from what I've seen, players need to take advantages of the services that are available to them.
Yeah, you mentioned that just a minute ago.
You'd be surprised how many former players won't utilize those services.
Yeah. Why is that, Timmy?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's bravado, arrogance.
Yeah.
You were arrogant once, and why not remain that way?
Right.
Because it worked once.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to pivot and say, yeah, I'm vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I do need the assistance. And so I'll give you an example. I don't drink, and so, but this wouldn't necessarily apply to me. But if a guy is drunk at a bar, all he has to do is use an 800 number or he can give an 800 number to a friend before he drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And someone will come pick him up and take him home free of charge.
Right, right.
Those little things are available. And so it's just utilizing the services that are available, I think, that would be monumental. The National Football League has come an awfully long way from the days I was playing.
Yeah.
And so they've done a lot of things very well.
That's great to hear.
And so it's just utilizing those services.
Well, and one of the things you also mentioned is being vulnerable. They're too prideful. And has that always been easy for you to be open and vulnerable growing up and throughout your life?
Not at all.
I was going to
No,
say.
I am the polar opposite.
But yeah, you're doing it.
You know,
right?
for me to sit here right now and have a conversation,
Vulnerable? This is big.
people will say, you're making a speech?
About vulnerability? Yeah.
But over time, I just decided that if I am going to continue to be a presence, then I might as well come out of my shell.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way to do that,
Making a difference.
making a difference.
Well, I tell you, closing question. Anything else you want to know before we wrap it here?
Well, what is the one message you want everyone to know about you and what you stand for today?
Wow.
Great question.
I think the overriding thing about what I try to project is a certain level of consistency in terms of what I believe in and the values that I've always tried to live up to. And so what they see in me, I can lead by example, or I can be assertive and say things that hopefully make sense.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm about.
And you went to college down in the state of North Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. So what would you say to some youngster that comes from your home state or here in the great state of Texas or any place across the country, playing off what Nina just asked you? What's the message that you would share to them, knowing what you went through when you came out of college and joined the Cowboys in 1980? I mean, that's 4 decades plus ago. What's the message you'd share?
The one thing I always tell young people who are interested in athletics, greatness is not defined by what you do when everybody's watching. It is what you do when nobody's watching. And that's the key.
Oh, that's awesome.
If you enjoy it while nobody's watching, then you're well on your way of having a quality athletic career.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Right.
Timmy, you're the best. Can't thank you enough for stopping by.
Thank you, Scott.
And we
Thank you,
we have a
Timmy.
chance to
Doctor?
see why he continues to do so many great things for so
Yes.
many other people too.
Motivating people just by example. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Yep.
being here.
Thank
Well, that's
you.
great. Thank you much, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. And thanks to all of you as well for yet another edition of Conversations of Connection. We're talking about mental wellness in sports and life. Timmy Newsome, former Dallas Cowboy and great entrepreneur of so many things, technology and what have you, but maybe more importantly, giving a difference in our community and making a difference where we need it most. And that is really special.
It's wonderful. Great.
So until next time, I'm Scott Murray.
I'm Dr. NinaRiosDoria. See you next time.
Be safe.